Right, let's get started. Good morning and welcome to this morning's webinar, Confidence After COVID. Today our speakers will be answering questions to confidently help you get back to work, into the workplace as the restrictions start lifting. Now hopefully you've all received your survival kits back to work, where our sponsors have kindly donated items, put items in there where they will help you on your first day. So we've got a cup of tea and a biscuit. They're really finding yourself as stressful to help you through the day. And when you take a break, you can have a Kit Kat, which has been put in by the Home of HR. And then we're looking at the Collaboration face masks, which if you don't mind taking a photograph and using it on your story on Instagram later and tagging us in, that'd be great. And everyone loves a new pen. And these are brilliant, your contactless keys, which mean you can push the buttons and also help you open doors as well. Now we do have the exciting gin, which after a stressful day, you can help yourself to it. So without further ado, let me introduce Nella, who will be presenting back into the working environment.
Great. Good morning, everyone. And another one. And click through again. So good morning, everyone. As many of you are starting to count down the days that we get back into a fully functioning office, a lot of businesses are thinking about what will this actually look like? Will it be exactly as you left it pre-lockdown, or will businesses be adapting to accommodate what they have learned over the last 12 months? But either way, it's time to respond. So to understand the future of offices, we need to understand what individuals want and need from their workplace. Face-to-face interaction, a place to collaborate, a place to build a culture, reduce occupational costs, and reducing commuting times featured highly. What is evident is the health and well-being is a key focus and has become as key as the financial health of the organisation. Next slide. According to the media, there has been wild statements about companies that are forcing their employees back into the office. CEOs claiming that remote working has been great and profits are up, but at the same time that at the end of lockdown, everyone will be back into the office. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of employees that are not willing to go back to this old way, and the war for talent is intensifying. Studies have indicated that employees want to work back in the office 2 to 3 days and the remainder from home or a place of their choice. And employees are driving this change. And whether you're a business owner, a manager, or a landlord, you have to listen to the end user, the employees. Next slide. Of course, every business is unique and it's not one size that fits all. But what is evident is that the technology has allowed us to work from anywhere and has created a much more work-life balance. So there would definitely have to be a change in the leadership styles going forward. As more companies offer flexibility in how their employees work, their real estate strategy is being examined to a high degree to balance their bottom line. So for businesses that are adopting this hybrid model where employees work from anywhere, it's really important to start to understand the financial pros and cons of what it actually means for a business and what is faced with the decisions of whether you're working in a conventional office or a flex workspace is more appropriate. So with regards to a service office, you typically pay a higher rate per square foot, as you're paying for flexibility, limited setup costs, no deposits on some locations, and the management of your office. So many businesses believe that if you've operated on 5,000 square feet, the floor plate, historically, for example, this is how much space they require for a service office, resulting in a 26% increase. However, what they sometimes don't realise is that the square footage can be reduced by sharing the communal amenities. So both the service office and co-working spaces offer you a chance to move with working remotely into a physical space. They both offer many businesses the benefits of having a home base for your business without the added burden that a traditional leasehold can bring. So selecting a space that works for you and your business and provides that level of flexibility you require is going to be more and more important. So based upon individuals working 3 days from the office, 2 days from home, on a headcount of 62 employees, the indicative hybrid costs could reduce 25% of a company's bottom line. And if a business went one step further to a co-working hybrid model, this could result in a 68% cost saving. And we're carrying out a number of feasibility studies for businesses, and we're exploring how we can best optimize their real estate based on a hybrid model. So wellness in the workplace is also one of the top topics that I'm speaking to several clients about right now. It's more fundamental to our clients' objectives than ever before, particularly at a corporate level. And a recent study demonstrated 89% plan to enhance their company's health and wellness strategies in the coming year. So building wellness reflects the impact that a physical workplace has on a person's physical and mental health. So for example, lighting, air quality, noise levels, and materials used. Next slide. So the physical and social environment is the #1 determinant of your health. We spend 90% of our lifetime indoors and 5% outdoors. It's just crazy. We're in a much more human-centric environment, and we need to design space with the end user in mind. So in terms of the short-term trends that we will see when we eventually return to the office, we will see a trend to reducing surface contact, reducing densities of space, increasing airflows in terms of the air conditioning exchange, eliminating doors, so touch points. So hopefully our handy key rings will come in handy. And another trend that we're finding is making the invisible visible. We've just experienced a global pandemic and we're faced with a virus that we cannot see. So buildings will have to shift to make things visible. So for example, how do you know that the air quality or the water quality is okay within your space? Do you know what the impact of the lighting system has on your health and well-being? And I think a lot of how our space has been spec'd out in terms of our health and well-being is going to be a long-term trend, and people want to see the data. Next slide. So I just want to end and say that our buildings are not meant to be dormant. You can't just switch off and reboot 12 months' time and expect everything to work. So one thing I want to highlight is Legionella. When individuals are going back into a workplace, water that has sat stagnant for all of that time needs to be flushed through and chlorinated. And we're talking a lot today about confidence after COVID, but what you've got to remember that Legionella is extremely resilient bacteria compared to COVID-19. And it's not just in the cooling pipes, it's in pool water, but at the end of the shower heads, for example. So for those that are cycling in and showering at work, going down this health route, just really think about Legionella. So real estate is, the cost is one of the most expensive costs on a company's balance sheet. And the pandemic has adjusted our perspective to being able to work from anywhere. So there are some huge cost savings to be had, but remember that your employees expect a safe, productive, and seamless experience they work. So hopefully that's been a very quick insight into the future of offices. Back to you, Lucy. You're on mute, Lucy.
There we go. Sorry, thank you, Nella. for that helpful overview of what you're seeing from a real estate perspective. We're now going to head over to speak to Alice from Home of HR.
So yeah, thank you. So I'm just going to talk you through some of the main factors to consider in helping your employees get back to work safely, comfortably, confidently, making sure that everyone's on the same page. So, you know, here we have a few points about things that you need to consider as an employer to get people back. So making the workplace COVID safe. So these are things that I referred to earlier in the risk assessment. So I won't say it again, but risk assessments are really important. If you haven't done one already, please do so if you are looking to return people back into the workplace. You know, with things like having one-way systems in place, arrows on the floor, signs on the doors, just reinforcing all the things that people need to be aware of. And if you're a workplace that hasn't perhaps been in work for a period of months, then people need that, you know, reminder, even though they're in it day to day in their daily lives. When you get back into work, you kind of get a bit more relaxed. So it's just to reinforce that in the workplace and make sure that people know what's expected of them. That goes with things like cleaning. So if you don't have an office that's cleaned by an external company, make sure that people know what they're expected to do. If you're required to do a deep clean, if you have people coming on different shift patterns, who's going to do what part of the cleaning. So that's all really important to get in place, and that will come under the risk assessment that you will need to do. Communication, I mentioned it briefly, and for anyone that's worked with me before, I harp on time and time again about communication. You cannot over communicate with people. It's so important, and like I said, it's so much better to hear nothing new than nothing at all. So engage with them, let them know when you're looking to return them back into the workplace, what that will look like, if there's any new measures, what they need to be aware of, how the workplace will look, any adjustments that will need to be made, and you know, things will change over time, and in the next few months things will change again. So it's just setting those expectations of what they can expect when they come back. Ensuring that all your working practices are understood. So again, I mentioned it earlier, but make sure that people do understand what's changed. If you are perhaps doing a different working arrangement or trialing a different working arrangement, then make sure that people are on board with that. You know, you're never going to get a one size fits all approach that works for everyone. You've got people that still have care and responsibilities, with either that be childcare or, you know, family members that are ill that can't still go outside. If you're trialing a different working arrangement, get your employees' views on it, because it's so important, and just keep that momentum going, keep engaging with them on that, and what they think could work and what they think couldn't work. And that ties into the next point around reviewing your current arrangements and having that discussion. And I know a lot of businesses, and a few of my clients have done this, in that they've surveyed their employees before they've come back into the workplace to understand what their preference would be to work. So would it be to come back and do a 3-day week in the office, 2 days at home, fully in the office? You know, I think Andrew mentioned it earlier, there's a very strong mix of businesses doing a lot of hybrid working at the moment. There's a very small percentage of people that do want to get back into the office 100% of the time. So it is going to be very varied depending on each individual circumstance, which is why it's so important to get a survey out to people just to understand what their thoughts and feelings are. And it also makes them feel engaged and valued as well. And the final one, ensuring everyone in the business understands the COVID symptoms. You know, like, you know, we've said before, this isn't going away. This is going to be here for a long time. Come the 21st of June, when hopefully restrictions lift, COVID isn't going to disappear. It's still going to be here. So making sure that your employees know what the symptoms are, if they catch it, if they notice somebody else potentially might have it, get on to that straight away and make sure that people understand them. Next slide, please. Communicate and engage. You know, I've put a slide on here because it is so important. And, you know, if you are a business that communicates all the time with your employees, great. If you're not, and you've maybe had some feedback over the last year in working remotely, take that feedback on board, because people do really like to be communicated with. You know, you've gone from working in a workplace where you're together 5-6 days a week, and, you know, you've gone from that to nothing. So having that communication constantly is really important, and people miss it as well. When you're looking to come back into the workplace, if you haven't done so already, have those conversations very early on. Don't leave it right until the last minute, because people will have arrangements to put in place. Yes, schools have gone back, nurseries have gone back, most care homes have now had their injections, but people still have some responsibilities. So make sure you're having conversations early on so that people have time to prepare and also understand what the implications are of returning to work. Getting their opinions and understanding on how they actually feel about returning is really important. There's so much out there now at the moment about mental health, and businesses need to consider this. This has been a very odd period for everyone. People have anxieties pre-COVID about going to work, let alone coming back when there's been a global pandemic and people are on heightened alert that they're going to catch the virus or they're going to fall ill and pass it on to their family members. It's really, really important, and I cannot stress that enough, that you as an employer really just have those conversations. You don't need to have a formal sit down chat with them, but just how are you feeling, how do you feel about coming back to work, how can we help you, how can we assure you in coming back that actually we have got a safe workplace in place. And that ties into the next point about providing them with assurance. Way back last year, when workplaces could return after the first lockdown, I suggested to clients that they take pictures of how they've set up the workplace and send it out to their teams to demonstrate that they've put these measures in place, so that they understand what is in place and what to expect. Because coming back into what may seem a very clinical working arrangement when it wasn't before will be quite daunting. So making sure that people know what they're walking into is key. And sharing your thoughts on how the business will operate. Are you going to have to work in a different way? Are you going to be liaising with clients differently? Are you going to be having customers come in differently? What does that look like? And what does that mean for your teams? Do you need to train them in a different way? How are they going to work that? Are they fully on board with that? It's all very much a two-way thing. It's not you directing things at them all the time. You really do need to get their opinions and thoughts on this, because at the end of the day, the people are your most important asset, and you need to look after them as much as they have a responsibility to come into work. You have a responsibility to look after them and assure them that the workplace is safe. If you haven't put measures in place that tie in with what the health and safety executive are suggesting and advising, you could be taken to court over potential health and safety risks that haven't been addressed. So please do bear in mind that you do need to carry out these risk assessments and make sure that everyone is on board with what they're coming back into. And I mentioned it briefly a minute ago, but be clear on what your expectations are on how holidays being used. And Dean mentioned a point I noticed in the chat about enforcing holiday and making sure that people do take their holiday. Yes, you absolutely can enforce holiday on people. You can suggest that people take holiday at certain times like you would normally. I know financial companies suggest that employees take certain leave halfway through the year, so you can still do that. That's not an issue, but it's just being clear on what is expected of employees. Next slide, please. So this is an interesting one, and I'm sure some of you will have come across this already, but how you respond to people that don't want to come back into the work. You've got two sides here, and two sides that I've heard a lot recently, actually. So on the one side, you've got someone that is genuinely very anxious about returning. They may not have had their COVID jab yet. I know I haven't had mine. They may be anxious about it. They may be a bit concerned and they want your assurance. They may also be very concerned that things aren't in place. So this is where it comes back to that assurance of making sure that, they are happy and comfortable. On the flip side, you have someone that may be just using this as an excuse. And this might be me being a cynical HR person, but you will have people that you will come across that will use this as an excuse for not coming back to work. The weather's getting nicer, albeit not warmer, but it's getting sunnier. People will want to not come back to work, even though they might have had a long period of time off. So, understand what the reasons are for them not wanting to come back. Ask them what they want to do, what they would like to do, what the options are for them. if you've done everything as much as you can, and I'm not saying you have to bend over backwards to make sure that you're doing everything for them, because that's not possible all the time. But as long as you've listened to them, put in place things to help them come back to work, and they're still being quite negative and just, you know, quite frankly, not willing to come back at all, then you may have to think about disciplinary action. That is the last resort, and that's kind of what you don't want to come across, but just bear that in mind, that that may be an option. And if you do come to that situation, then do get advice on that. Next slide, please. The job retention scheme. So this is still in place, which is great. And I think when I heard that it was announced it was going to be extended until September, but we hadn't yet heard what the next steps were or what the roadmap out of lockdown was, it was quite interesting to see that this was extended. But great, because I know that businesses are still using it. And it's a great scheme to have in place, especially if you're not fully back to work and you don't have capacity to have everyone back. Use flexible furlough. You know, it's still there, it's there. The government have put it in place for businesses to be able to survive, and to be able to accommodate certain people coming back and being able to support people. One change that is coming in from the 1st of May, you can now furlough people or flexi furlough people that were employed from March. So the government have just changed that and updated those guidelines to come in from the 1st of May. So that is applicable for anyone that was or had an RTI submission on payroll from March last year to March this year. So as long as that person was employed with you from March this year, you can then furlough them. And I think that's great news for any business that has potentially returned but is still struggling. So at least, you know, you've still got that to fall back on if you need to. And I think if you can, then absolutely do, because the government have put that in place so that you can have that funded 80% of their salary. Next slide, please. So to close and finish off really, so just to summarize what I've gone through. So most importantly, make sure that your workplace is safe for everyone to return to, not just your employees, customers, clients, anyone that walks through your door. Make sure that they know what's expected of them. You know, even things like parking, and this was something that came out in after the first lockdown. If you've got a car park that, you know, everyone drives into, you don't have enough spaces, less of an issue now where more people are getting the vaccination, but still be mindful that, you know, if people can find some other way to get into work, then great. Having said that, there are still anxieties about people using public transport. So it comes back to that engagement and communication part. Understand how people are going to be getting into work and understand what and if there are any anxieties around that are. Ensure you've got a plan. You know, again, after the risk assessment, this is one of the most important things. If you don't have a plan to get your people back into work, everything will fall down. People will have so many questions about what it looks like to come back to work. So it's really, really important to get that in place. I've worked with a number of clients on making sure that their plans are fit for purpose, solid. People will know what's expected of them. So just make sure that you've got something that works in place. Again, considering those personal circumstances, what does coming back to work mean for them? How will that impact their daily lives? You know, that's so important. Reassuring them that it is safe to return to, that measures are in place, and that there are, you know, if there's ways that they need to clarify with you and check with you certain, you know, health and safety things that you've put in place, make sure that that is available to them to do, and make sure that they know where to go and who to ask for certain clarifications. And 100% still make use of the job retention scheme if you can. It's there until September, you know, it's there for you. And if you need to use it, don't be afraid to, because that's what it's there for. Thank you.
So with businesses putting their staff on remote working, how does this affect their insurance?
Good morning, everybody. It's difficult because there's so many different policies which people buy, but I suppose the key one is employer's liability. Everyone has to buy that as part of law, and within that, you need to make sure that your employees are safe at home. So that's people with hundreds of thousands of employees working from home at the moment. They need to ensure that their staff are working in safe working environments. We haven't seen it yet. We probably won't do for a while. But if one of their employees was to injure themselves working at home because the employer hasn't checked that they're working in a safe environment, there's a chance that the employee could make a claim under the employer's liability insurance. Unlikely. You have to prove that the employer has been negligent. But again, a lot of these scenarios which I'll go through with you hasn't happened yet. There has to be case law that has to be presented. But I would say that all employers need to make sure that their employees are safe working from home. The other thing also is there's a lot of equipment now been taken out of the offices and going back into people's homes. This can be damaged, stolen. The employers need to make sure that their insurance is providing cover for those equipment. Some people just have a laptop, which might be £500. I've got clients who are recording artists who have thousands and thousands of pounds of equipment which has been taken home. So you need to make sure that equipment is covered for damage whilst at home or away from the office. And one of the new things I suppose is cyber insurance. A lot of people might be working on their home PCs. They might not have any antivirus. They might not have any malware protection. If someone wants to hack into that system, company data might be compromised. So what insurance employees need to make sure is that if one of their systems are compromised, how is their data secure? You can buy cyber insurance, but you would need to speak to your broker and your insurance provider to see if they can extend to employees' computers.
Thank you, Michael. Well, we're going to go across now. And so what can employers do to make their staff feel more confident on their return to the workplace, Sullivan?
So in our experience of talking to our clients over the last 12 months, they've told us that their staff actually want to come back to the office. Obviously, there's going to be some people who are anxious and nervous, but we believe that by making the office a softer, warmer, more comfortable place for people to come back to, that the staff will actually feel more confident and secure.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's thank you for that, Ollie. Now, Andy, please, have you seen a change in the level of candidates looking to make a move?
Yes, definitely the last few months. I think since the last lockdown in January, there's been a lot more confidence in terms of we're coming out of the lockdown. Everyone sees the end's in sight. I think people that have been nervous to make a job move for the last year or so, and even before that with Brexit, people were still a little bit nervous. I think people are now feeling more confident that it is the right time to make a move. Some of that is also being spurred by the fact of they're seeing that their current company are deferring back to their old ways of working. And before COVID hit, the big thing we were seeing as a business, recruitment-wise, was people were looking for a job change, and salary is always one of the main things, but right up there is flexibility in home working, and that was a big on a lot of people's agendas before COVID, and this just fast forwarded everything. And I think some companies are almost deferring back to their old ways of working, wanting people in the office 5 days a week, 9 to 5, and people have got used to that flexibility, that home working, and so it's actually pushing them on to want to make a career move. And so, yeah, we're definitely seeing the confidence is returning on moving jobs. The market, I think, as well, people, unemployment figures, the media, you see unemployment going through the roof, but in the market we recruit in, which is property and surveying, it's still been really, really busy. Last year, we've got a lot of companies that have had record years, and similar, this year. I think people are realising that actually, the uncertainty isn't necessarily there in the market we recruit in, which is again giving people confidence to make that move.
Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much, Andy. Just a quick one. Can you just please make sure that you have muted yourselves so that there's no background for the speakers. So now back to Michael. So can we claim against our employer if we catch COVID at work?
There's no right or wrong answer here. I don't think it's still too early. I think we're still learning a lot about COVID, catch it and where we catch it and how you can pass it on. With employers' liability insurance, you have to prove negligence against your employer. And you would have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you caught COVID at the workplace. The problem is you get such a variety of scenarios. You get symptoms a day after catching it or a week after catching it. You just can't prove where you caught it. I think one thing that we will see is if there is fundamental breaches of health and safety in the workplace and there's constant outbreaks, I think we will see claims being made. But I think it's more in respect of the HSE making claims against or bringing down investigations against the employers for constant lack of breaches. But it's a tough one. The issue you also got is that once that one claim has been made and an employer has been found guilty, you'll just find everyone trying to claim for it. And then how do you quantify a loss as well? Are you in bed for 7 days, 14 days? If you've got long COVID, how do you quantify the claim? So the answer is not sure yet. Maybe, yeah, who knows?
Bit of a grey area still, but
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's insightful to know. But yeah, go back to Ollie. So what can we do to improve our space and make our staff feel more comfortable in the return to the workspace?
So there's a huge variety of products that are antibacterial as standard. And we believe that by integrating these into the workplace, we can make it safer. So there's flooring that actually traps fine dust particles and therefore helps to purify the air we breathe. The paint, doors, solid surfaces and seating and lighting can all be specified as products that inherently kill viruses and bacteria. And we believe that by implementing some of these measures, it will help to make staff feel more confident in their return to the office.
Thank you, Ollie. So back to Andy. How are you hearing from your clients and how they plan to operate their business model? Because 100% of the office is it remote or working hybrid or hybrid?
It's a real mixed bag, to be honest with you. Some companies, as I mentioned earlier, some I would say more traditional companies are defaulting back to 5 days a week back in the office. I see most of the companies we work with are probably going to move to a hybrid model of part-time in the office, part-time from experience speaking with candidates and employees. I think that's the best model to fit most people. But yeah, it's a real mixed bag, and that differs, even within companies, depending on the manager, director, and their viewpoint on how the business has performed, how I guess the type of work that they're doing within surveying, how easy it can be that they can do it from home, how out of the office they were previously. And I think another factor to it is depending on the seniority of the team. So one thing that's really, really difficult in the market that has been hit the last year is graduate market. And it's really, really difficult for graduates to get the experience and get the support they need, even with a hybrid model of 2 days a week from home. I think, if you've got a number of graduates and junior people in your team, almost the best option is to be in the office 5 days a week to give them that support. Yeah, across the board, it's a real mixed bag, but in the main, the hybrid model is what most companies are going to in the first instance, and we'll see if they stick to that longer term.
I think I am actually wearing the shirt, working in an office environment at the moment, but I wonder how many people actually are, getting back into their work attire, that they're feeling confident to do all that as well. And we do have Alice on now, so she hopefully, is Alice, are you there, Alice?
I am here, yes. Can you hear me?
Hello, Alice. It's Alice Hosker, Home of HR. So to go into the question, what procedures are required to ensure a COVID-safe environment?
So there's a lot that businesses need to ensure are put in place, and a lot of guidance comes from the HSE, so from the Health Safety Executive. And a lot of this is based around risk assessments. So the first thing that you need to do is to make a COVID risk assessment. I have one that I'm willing to share and happy to share with anyone that would like one that hasn't already done a risk assessment in their business. But that's really important to do because it goes through a number of areas that you need to kind of check off, make sure that the workplace is safe, make sure that your staff are happy to come back to work, and it just goes over a number of things that you need to ensure you have in place that you might not have done pre-COVID, which a lot of businesses won't have. So making sure that you've got health and safety bits and pieces in place, making sure that you've got you know, notices up on the walls, posters up in the toilets, making sure that people are cleaning, washing their hands, you know, all the very basic things, but it's just there as a reminder for people. And also making sure that everyone understands that as well. So it's not just about getting things in place and ticking things off on the risk assessment, but making sure that your employees, people that come into your workspace, will understand that as well. So it's really, really important to do that first risk assessment.
So thank you, Alice. We're going to go back to Michael. So have there been any successful insurance claims been made for catching COVID at work?
It probably follows on from my previous answer. The answer is not yet. I think it will take months and years for them to be made. I think a lot of this relates to HSE guidance, again, proving that you can catch it, you've caught the virus at work. I think what will happen is that a lot of businesses who continually breach the protocols and there are constant outbreaks, the HSE will come down on people. You do need to have, most businesses should have management liability or directors and officers insurance in place as a legal defence to protect themselves in event of investigation by the HSE. I think we might see businesses shut down temporarily by the HSE if there's constant outbreaks, but it's just a case of waiting and see to see what happens. Like I said previously, once the first claim gets paid or it goes to court, and it can be proved that someone did catch COVID at work because the employer was negligent. The key thing is that the employer has to be negligent to cause that, the virus being caught at work. I think we'll just see a ripple effect. I think the insurers won't want that to happen. I really don't. The other problem you've got with the employer's liability insurance is that in most cases, claims are paid. It's strict liability policy. It's one of the only two policies that you need to buy in law. But again, unfortunately, it's just a case of waiting to see what happens. Once that first claim goes through, then we'll just see continuous. It's like PPI, isn't it, and things like that. Once the first claim gets paid, they all start trying to get on the bandwagon.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. So we're going to go speak to Andy again. So as the war for talent intensifies, what initiatives are you seeing businesses offer to attract staff?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see a growth in terms of some of like the healthy living benefits being offered and also promoted. I think some companies have a suite of perks that they have, but they don't necessarily push forward to candidates and let their employees know about them. So things like the cycle to work scheme, I think things like discounted gym memberships going forward, having facilities like showers so that people can, you know, commute in, run in, cycle into work, whatever it is. So those, you know, we all know, I think well-being and physical well-being and stuff is really been highlighted again this year. So things like that are going to be really, really important. And then private healthcare, again, for sort of obvious reasons, increased holiday allowances, you know, days off for birthdays, little things like that. And I think yeah, the problem is, certainly some bigger companies and corporate companies have a lot of this already in place, but they don't actually sell these benefits to people when they're interviewing them, and they sort of send it as part of an offer letter, but it's glossed over, and some of this is getting more and more important. But my overriding feeling on this is still, ultimately, those things aren't going to be the decision makers for people to join a company. Still, the biggest things that we see are the salary and the financial package is still really, really important. Alongside that, it's that flexibility, home working, which in the 15 years I've been doing this, the last sort of 3 to 4 years, that's been the biggest thing that most people have been asking for, and the reason it's sort of driven change. And that's only going to be the same thing going forward, and again been highlighted because people have had the opportunity to work from home, seen that they can do it, seen that they have that benefit in terms of reduced commute times, better opportunity to spend time with the family and all that sort of stuff. So I think those are the key things, and that's where, if companies get that right and are flexible and can offer the hybrid model, that's how they're going to win the war on talent. And also, conversely, the people that don't do that will lose people because of it.
Brilliant. Thank you. So next question. So Alice, back to you. If you can unmute yourself, please. With businesses putting their staff on remote working, HR implications does that have? For example, businesses be responsible to carry out risk assessments in people's homes?
Yes. So there's a few implications that this has, and I've noticed it quite a lot with clients recently. But there's things that you need to make sure that people are working efficiently. You need to make sure that people have somewhere to work. I have clients that are still, or have people that are working with a laptop or a computer on their laps in the front room, and that's not sustainable, and it's not good for their health either. So you don't need to go as far to say, right, we need to go into every person's home and we need to check that you're able to work safely. You don't need to do that. It's just about having a conversation with them, maybe even asking for photos of how they're set up as well, to understand if that is actually okay. If you have people that have certain illnesses or conditions that you need to be aware of, or that you are aware of, then obviously they might need some extra equipment as well. So if someone's got a long-term back condition, you may need to provide them with a specific chair. There are stand-up desks that I'm sure you're all familiar with, and some people may need to have those at home. So whatever you do at work, you need to replicate at home as well, because you are still their employer. You still have a duty of care to look after their welfare. So you need to make sure that those things are in place. And also regularly check in. We are a year on now, and I'm sure lots of you have already been through this and hopefully are having those conversations with your staff that are working from home. But it's really important to stay engaged, and I will mention that a bit later on. It's so important, and keep them up to date on what's going on. Even if you have nothing to say that's new, people would rather hear you say, well, we've got nothing to update you on, but this is where we're at the moment, because people will disengage so quickly. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you need to be aware of as an employer, but making sure that your staff are safe and able to work properly and are still engaged, and you understand what they're doing, they understand what's expected of them, is really, really important.
Brilliant. Well, that would be worth speaking to Ollie for office furniture to provide at home. They've got some, but he's got some furniture. But let me go across to Michael again, please. So can we ensure for loss of business income for COVID going forward?
In short, no, I doubt it. A lot of people probably saw last year, insurers got a really bad name because they're kicking out loads of business interruption claims, especially the hospitality and the retail sector. Insurers were saying we're not paying when potentially they should have done. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, I think to about 14 insurers, yeah, you need to pay. But then what you will see, whether you're retail, hospitality, or any business, at renewal this year, all your policies will have a COVID-19 exclusion on them. And this also, if you had an infectious disease extension under your insurance, that will also now exclude COVID-19. that will be on there for the foreseeable. What I think will happen if COVID doesn't disappear, it sounds like we're going to have to live with it forever. There may be some government-backed pot of cash in the future. I'm thinking outside the box, similar to flood, similar to terrorism. That's more than likely what's going to happen. But a generic policy, you'll have COVID-19 exclusions across the board now.
Oh, right. Thank you very much, Michael. We're going to go speak to Alice again. So if individuals are no longer working 9 to 5 p.m. and working around their schedule, how do businesses ensure that they're being paid accordingly and manage holiday allowances if businesses are allowing remote working?
Such a good question, and it's really tricky. You know, I'm sure a lot of businesses have found this really difficult to manage their staff over the last year. A lot of it comes down to trust. The businesses that I've seen that have really succeeded in people working from home are businesses that have a culture of trust. You know, if you trust your employees to get on, they will get on and they will do the job for you, and then there'll be no second question around that. However, I do have clients that have allowed teams to build up a lot of toil because they have simply, you know, they have had a lot of work to do, but it hasn't been managed accordingly. So it goes back a bit to the last answer, in that keep in contact, keep your teams engaged, because if you're not up to speed on what they're doing and they are working a lot more hours than they should be, then that's an issue, and that's something that you need to address. There was something that came out a little while ago that I shared on some social media channels, but you know, there's a huge percentage of people that have been working over and above their hours over the last year, and it's really difficult. It kind of comes down to how you as a business operate and how you want to manage that with them. You know, the government brought in new legislation around working time regulations last year to allow people to carry over statutory holiday for the next 2 leave years, which is great because everyone's been working. There was nowhere to go last year. Again, it's going to be very limited on where people can go, so a lot of holiday won't be used. So people will naturally be building up holiday or flexi if your business operates a flexi time scheme. So that allows people to then carry certain holiday over into the next 2 years. What you don't want to be in a situation with is having a lot of toil or hours that are built up that people then can't use, and you don't want to pay them because, again, that's a big cost after the year that we've just been through. So it is a really case by case basis, and it's a really HRA answer in that it depends, really depends on the circumstances, and it really depends on the situation. If you have a particular tricky issue or individual that's really playing hardball with the fact that they've worked up a number of hours, get advice, because I would say get advice at the earliest opportunity rather than getting down to a later stage and potentially being in a really unfortunate situation that you don't want to be in.
Thank you, Alice. Now we've got a final question, and it goes to Andy. You're going to unmute yourself. So has there been a surge of new roles that exist now that they didn't before COVID? For example, is there a chief wellness officer?
Yeah, following on from probably what Alice was saying earlier, there have been a few new roles like that. Director of remote working is another role that big companies have got, which is all, you know, about not only checking the physical sort of workspace that people are working in, but checking that they're still connected with the employer. I think that's one of the things that to get the home working right, people need to feel part of a company, otherwise you lose that loyalty. And all of a sudden, when we go back to that talk about war on talent, if you don't feel part of a company, then all of a sudden, if someone comes along and offers you a couple of extra grand more or whatever else, then it's very easy to move because you haven't got that loyalty to the people or to the company you're working for. So yeah, there's that role. The chief wellbeing officer role is definitely one that there's been an increase in, and that's a really important role. And ultimately, we know that wellbeing is linked to everything like absenteeism, productivity, staff turnover. So the rise of that sort of role is something that I think is only going to continue. And Alice will probably be better to talk you through that. But there's definitely those new sort of roles coming off the back of COVID. And I think, you know, they're roles that are needed to make sure that if we move towards this more hybrid model of working, that people are looked after. And you can't, you know, if they're not in the office and you're not seeing them and they're not, you know, not feeling part of the business by physically being in the same office as you, what are you doing to make them feel collaborated and to feel part of the wider business if they are working from home?
Wow, thank you ever so much, Andy. What is that? We're going to do a question and answer session now. So we've got a couple of questions coming through. So if we could have some more questions, that would be great. But the first question that's come through, has the cost of insurance premiums typically gone up? And that is obviously to Michael.
Yes, yeah, they have, astronomically in some cases. In respect of COVID, I expect you will see quite monumental DNO policies. Insurers getting a bit twitchy with respect to businesses trying to survive through this pandemic, which might result in businesses cut corners, which then in turn might receive actions from HMRC, HSE, that kind of thing. We're seeing in some cases 200 to 300% rate increases on management liability insurance. I had a client who paid £4,000 last year. It went up to 14.5 grand. And their turnover haven't increased. They survived COVID. But insurers are trying to build a pot of cash for expected claims to come in the years to come. And unfortunately, me and everyone else who buys insurance has to bear the brunt of it, I'm afraid.
Right. Another question for Andy. Are we seeing more companies from London targeting people in our region by offering remote work?
Yeah, good question. It's not something we've seen or experienced much of, to be honest. It's probably been more the other way in terms of people living in London who are looking to relocate out. And so actually, you know, there might be, well, there are more candidates potentially coming available into the area because they're looking to get out of London. You know, obviously with lockdown, the appeal of being in London has probably diminished quite a bit. So, you know, the idea of having some outside space rather than living in a flat or apartment in London is quite appealing. So we're seeing it the other way, actually. We're probably seeing some more employees looking to move out of London and relocate down here. So actually, you know, probably the numbers, in a good way, it's a positive for the region because there might be some more good talent coming through. But yeah, we haven't really been approached by many London-based companies looking for you know, surveyors to be based down this way.
Well, thank you. I think the you know, the property market is booming, as we've seen. You know, it's very hard to find any properties as soon as they go on the market. They are letting. I think a lot of people are moving down to the forest or moving to the areas where they're near you know, the south coast now. I think Nella's touched on that quite a bit with the office buildings as well. So we're going to go across to the question to someone's asked a question on useful to hear the view on the workplace lateral flow testing, and if you don't participate, what will happen?
Sorry, so just unmuting. Yeah, so it's another interesting question. I mean, you can't force employees to have the lateral flow testing, and I've had a few businesses and a few friends that have been in this situation already for people that they know have refused to have it. And my question would be why? You know, there are certain reasons why people won't have the vaccination. They might be for health reasons, they might be for religious reasons. So my first point would always be to ask them why they won't have it. To then assure them that actually having it means that they can be working in a safe workplace and helping everyone else. I think if you have the option and they're being sort of very negative, don't want to engage at all, then get them to work from home. But that's potentially not a long-term viable option. So I think, you know, firstly, ask them why. Secondly, reassure them as to the reasons why you're asking them to do this. if it gets to the point where there is absolutely no way that they're going to engage, then, you know, you might need to think about something else. And that's when you need to get some advice. Because again, every situation is different. If you don't have that conversation and you go straight down sort of the formal route and wanting to discipline somebody for doing it, you know, you might have missed out a whole piece of the puzzle. Someone might be very anxious about doing it, or someone might have medical reasons for not wanting to do it. So, you know, it's all about communication. I can't say it enough. You've got to have those conversations with your employees, and just understand the reasons why they're not wanting to do that. There's been no case law yet, as I'm aware, that's come out from this. I did have someone ask me that question the other day, if anything has come out from any tribunals yet. There hasn't, but I'm sure there will be, and I'm sure once the first goes through, it will be, you know, a cascade of many more. But as yet, we haven't had any case law that has come out of this.
Brilliant. Well, we're actually running out of time now. We've coming to 11 o'clock, so I'm sure there's more questions that you would like to ask, and you could probably, what we'll do is we'll share the details of our but we hope that today's speakers have been some exciting, give you the tools and confidences to support your team in the next coming months. So we do have some exciting webinars coming up and events. We have got an event schedule which we have put in the boxes, but we will get that out to you as well. And so we would really like you to get involved, and we would really love to hear from you and get some feedback. So thank you everybody for attending, and you know, good afternoon, good night. We have got people online from Singapore and Australia. So thank you very much for everyone attending, and I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you.